Enhance was really inspired by three events. The first was just growing up in China. I had always wanted to write something inspired loosely on Asian culture. The second thing was listening to a radio special on CRISPR and thinking about what would this look like if this actually took off. And then the last thing was when my company sent me back to China nearly a decade later and just seeing how much technology had advanced and wanting to base a story even further in the future with more technological advancements. So, CRISPR is a gene editing technology that actually exists today. And if you haven't heard of it before, I highly encourage you to check it out because it's just mind blowing what they're able to do today. And it started with patients who have sickle cell anemia and being able to experiment with that and actually help people in treating that. But they're starting to move into other areas of gene editing, and it's absolutely fascinating. That's such a good question because I think it has shifted, and I didn't even notice it until you asked that question. So I've always loved YA. Young adult is my favorite for sure. But growing up, I read a lot of mystery novels. Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew series, Nikki Holland series. All these mystery novels were my jam. Of course, I loved fantasy as well. I also really enjoyed historical fiction. But that's shifted now. I still love YA, but I think it's more sci fi, it's contemporary, it's fantasy still. But yeah, there has been a slight shift, but YA for sure has stayed the same. Growing up in China was amazing. It was a wild ride and experience. I think Beijing probably shaped Enhance the most just because that's where I was living when I wrote it, and I was very filled with inspiration just living there and being surrounded by so much rich history mixed with a lot of modern culture. It was a really interesting blend. But there actually are a lot of scenes that were based loosely off of places I had been writing at when I was writing Enhanced in Beijing. For instance, pretty much all the coffee shops and cafes and restaurants in Enhanced are places that I was writing at the time and enjoying delicious food, which is also why you see so much delicious food in Enhanced. But one of the places that sticks out to me the most is the hutongs, which actually do exist in Beijing today. Like in the middle of this huge city, you just have this tiny little pocket of old China. And like all around it are these skyscrapers just choking out these tiny little homes that are just very old. And so when I was writing Enhanced, I kept thinking about, gosh, if the hutongs were still here in 100 years, like what would that look like? And so the hutongs were able to stay. They made a impression on me, and so they stayed in Enhanced. But yeah, they're based off of a real place that you can actually go to in Beijing today. So I wanted to show you guys some fun parts in the cover. So if you look, you'll see two sets of Chinese characters. And the ones over here say 水落石出, which is actually a Chinese chenyu or a saying. And it means as the water begins to recede, the rocks show. And it's hinting at Urban's sort of secrets that she's hiding and will she be tangled up in her web of lies. Then on the other side over here, we have some more Chinese characters. And these ones say wushu, which is martial arts and plays an important part in the book. But actually, throughout the book, inside the chapter headings, there's lots of Easter eggs. So as you're reading Enhanced, definitely keep an eye out for those because I have a lot of hidden meanings in the book. Well, as you can see, I definitely am a tea drinker, but I love variety. I love to drink coffee for sure. I mean, having a 1 year old around the house, definitely coffee. But usually, I think throughout the day, I switch to tea. So I start off with coffee, or if I'm going to a coffee shop, I'll drink a latte. And then as the day goes by and I'm trying to limit my caffeine intake, I usually switch to like jasmine pearls or maybe some sort of tea. I also love hot chocolate, making my own chai from scratch. I like making my own matcha lattes, kombucha. I mean, pretty much you name it. I'm probably drinking it while I am writing. So, probably coffee and tea are my favorite, but variety is the spice of life. So in China, surnames actually come first and given names come last. So in America, my name is Candace Kade, but in China, my name is Sun Tian Tian. And Tian Tian is actually my given name, and then Sun is my last name. And that's just culturally how it is. You have the surnames come first. And so that's why in Enhanced, you see Lee Urban actually has her surname, Lee, come first, and then Urban comes after that. And so that's why you see that actually in Enhanced. So this is actually a piece of advice that my corporate mentor back when I was working at Dell gave me, but is applicable to writing as well. And it served me really, really well in the corporate environment and also in my writing career. And the advice is it's not what you know, but who you know. And that doesn't mean you don't have to know your craft, you don't have to work hard. But what it does mean is when you get to know other people along the way, it's going to help you so much in your career. And I found that to be true. You know, meeting other writers has helped me in my craft and becoming a better author because I've had critique partners and I've had people help me with my pitch before I practiced it on Steve. You know, I've had people who encourage me when I feel like, oh my gosh, it's been over a decade and I'm still not published. You know, writing is a long journey, and I think having friends along the way who can help you with your craft, who can encourage you, who can make introductions to publishers, who can just walk alongside the journey makes it so much more enjoyable and gives you more hope, and in the long run makes you a better author. This is such a hard one because I love so many of the foods and I miss them all the time. But probably the one I've been craving recently is youtiao, which was one of my favorite breakfast foods. And it's kind of like a fried donut, but instead of being circular, it's just long and skinny. And there's no sugar, there's no glaze. Like it's probably a healthier version. It's still fried version of a donut, but you have this fried youtiao and then you dip it in doujiang or this it's soy milk, but you dip it in like warm soy milk and that's how you eat it, which I know sounds kind of strange, like a non-sweet donut dipped in warm soy milk, but I promise it's the best, and that's probably one of the ones that I currently am missing the most. I have, and it was so amazing. It was actually when I was in grad school, one of my friends had a motorcycle, and I got stuck on campus and got a ride on the back of it. And we actually raced a train, which is where I got the idea for the first couple chapters where Urban is on her motorcycle racing a maglev, because it was just incredible. Like the stars were overhead and we were just flying next to this train, and it was incredible. And so, yeah, so much fun. I have ridden a motorcycle, but do not own one. That's a good question. If I get stuck, I think I tend to drink more tea or coffee, go to some playlists that I have, and I'll listen to some inspirational music. If I'm really stuck, I'll message my critique partners, maybe even go for a walk and set it down for a little bit and come back. I have a lot of hobbies, traveling, going on adventures, exploring, baking, experimenting with sourdough bread, any sort of sports, camping. I think it just depends on the season. Like I went through a heavy season of martial arts and travel and Spartan races. And currently, being under deadline, having a 1 year old, my hobbies are a little bit closer to sourdough experimentation. For sure, the ending. I rewrote the ending so many times. Like, I'm talking totally different endings. So, yeah, the ending was the hardest part. My favorite national park is the Arches National Park because it's unlike any other park I've seen. Like, it feels like you're in a foreign country when you arrive, or like you've landed on Mars. And hiking through it was just so surreal. And the arches themselves were just beautiful. If I were to take an enhanced character with me to hike it, I think it would have to be Ash because it would be so fun to just fly through the arches. And also at night, one of my favorite parts of the park is just how the stars come out and you can just see so many more stars than you typically could in like the city or the suburbs. And I think if I were just like flying around in the park at night under the stars, that would just be the coolest thing ever. You know, it's really funny because I think the most fun part about writing enhanced was while I was in Beijing, I was so stressed out at the time, working crazy hours in my second language, totally exhausted and burnt out. And so enhanced was very much my escape and brought me a lot of joy during that season. But then as I was editing it, I was actually back in the States. And so when I was back in the States, my favorite part about writing enhanced was just getting to go back to China and feel like I was back in that culture again. Thanks everyone for listening. If you enjoy fast action, new worlds, and plot twists that will blow your mind, along with lovable characters, definitely check out Enhanced. I think you will love it.